Welcome everyone to our career panel series. Today we're focusing on environmental and sustainable biotechnology in the life science industry. It's a very burgeoning field in New York City, especially in the life science industry. So we're in for a treat today. So a little bit about the program. We're that's hosting with Life Sci NYC Internship Program. We're part of New York City's Economic Development EDC's New York City's 10-year, $1 billion initiative to grow the life science industry in New York. We offer paid internships and part-time and full-time opportunities for both undergrads and grad students in both science and business management tracks throughout the school year and in the summer. So please apply at lifesci.nyc/students. There's a bit of urgency because the summer application deadline is actually at the end of this week on March 31st. So if you're interested, just submit an application before then so that you can have access to all the different summer opportunities, including ones in environmental and sustainable biotechnology. Thank you. So this is our team that runs the program, and we're happy to offer this career panel and have the panelists share their experiences. We're very excited for this. These are our four panelists. We have Valentina Gomez, co-founder of Werewool. Arjeta, who's a scientist at Aanika Biosciences. Bri, who's the COO at Vader Nanotech, and Jin, who is the R&D engineer at Upward Farms. So very happy to have everyone kind of here. And I would like everyone to, the panelists to kind of introduce themselves, like what they do at their company, the work, and kind of the career path to this point, just like a brief introduction. Thank you. Maybe Jin, you could get started.
Oh gosh, oh man.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
It's okay. It's just public speaking, one of my greatest weaknesses. But yeah, hi, my name is Jin. So I'm a chemical materials R&D engineer and program manager at Upward Farms. So what Upward Farms does is that we grow plants aquaponically. So that means that we grow fish and then we grow plants. We use waste from the fish to turn it into plant soluble and plant usable nitrogen source in a bioreactor where we feed that into plants and we let it grow and harvest all within, New York City. So we provide an organic salad mix to the New York City metro area. And most of my job is a materials discovery where I find cheaper and more environmentally friendly growing substrates because we obviously don't want to just dig out soil in the middle of Greenpoint in the Gowanus Canal and start growing microgreens with it. So I take a lot of inspiration from the polymers, paper, and fiber industry, but something else I have to keep in mind of is a big part of our company is focusing on the symbioticness of microbes and plant growth and how we can use that to benefit plant yields, desirable traits for us. So that goes a large part into my design and my work. And I make sure that what is going out is food safe and material safe. And kind of how I got started was when I was in high school, I got the opportunity to work in a polymers lab. I took it, I immediately ran with it. I realized I wanted to work in a lab for the rest of my life. And then so when I was in Alaska for a couple of years, or I grew up there, but when I went to university, I got to work in a lab where I was trying to tackle how do we get rid of or decrease coliforms and parasite counts in natural waterways. And that kind of transitioned into my career in biotech, where I joined another startup called Helena, where I was making nature identical infant formula. There, I had a lot of experience doing genetic engineering, bioprocess engineering, culturing, and downstream purification, where it kind of just ultimately allowed me to end up in my current role and excel at it.
That's very interesting, especially very interesting in the field. We all know about the different, alternative sort of foods that they're trying to develop. So that's very interesting. Thank you. Bree, could you go next, please?
Yeah, for sure. So hi,
Yes.
I'm Bree. I guess a little bit of background about me. I did my undergraduate degree at Arizona State University, graduated in 2020. That was in biological sciences, so kind of broad. I wasn't really ready to hone in on one area, got a lot of different skill sets. I'm now actually a third-year PhD candidate at ASU as well, getting my PhD in molecular and cellular biology, where I'm kind of focused on computational biology and understanding this interplay between the environment and how that might affect health and disease in your genes. And there's a link to what I do at Vader. So right now, my current role is the Chief Operating Officer at Vader Nanotechnologies, where we're actually developing a high throughput screening platform for PFAS degrading microbes. And so a lot of my background, like I mentioned, has been in computational biology, genetics, and genomics. So I am actually super interested in understanding what about these microbes makes them unique genetically, so they can actually do this work more efficiently. Lots of the ways that we're thinking about remediating different waste streams are not efficient, are not high throughput, and we don't really have a lot of tools in the shed, so to say, to do this work. So what we're doing at Vader is working with different areas in the New York and New Jersey, I guess, metro area to look at how we can remediate waste streams in these areas, as well as collaborate with large chemical production companies who are really interested in putting their best foot forward and trying to undo some of the mess that they did initially in producing these sort of chemicals. So yeah, happy to be here.
That's great. That's great. That's a very interesting technology. Thank you for helping, I guess, companies clean up their problem that they created.
Yeah.
Arjeta, could you go next, please?
Yeah, of course. So, hi, I'm Arjeta. I graduated back in 2019 with my bachelor's degree in biochemistry. I currently work as a scientist at Aanika Biosciences. We're a startup in Brooklyn that's using Bacillus subtilis spores to track and trace products through supply chains. Right now, we have a focus on food safety. So we're hoping to use our spores as a sort of like biological label. Like if you have for example, a label barcode that you have on like a box of lettuce, you'd be able to actually physically apply that onto lettuce. And so we're hoping that we would allow farmers and companies to track recalls to the source and to prevent food waste. In that way, sort of how I got to where I am right now. I actually am an alumni of the Life Sciences program. I got my internship at Biotech Without Borders, which is a nonprofit. I mentored high school students through the International Genetically Engineered Machine Competition, or the iGEM competition. And that's where I met my mentor, Dr. Ellen Jorgensen, who brought me to Aanika. I started back as practically one of their first employees, and I've since worked my way up as a scientist. So it's kind of basically where I am now.
That's very interesting, the technology as well. And Valentina?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm Valentina. I'm one of the co-founders and the Chief Innovation Officer at Werewool. I went to the Fashion Institute of Technology, so I don't have a traditional science background. But so I went to FIT, I studied textiles development with a minor in ethics and sustainability. And at Werewool, we're developing a new type of biodegradable performance textile fiber that looks to recombinant protein structure and plant-based ag waste. So with these proteins, we're able to eliminate some of the toxic dyeing process, some of the toxic processes of textiles, such as the dyeing and the performance finishes, such as moisture management. And yeah, we started back in 2018 when I was a student at FIT. My co-founder Chu and I, we took this class called the bio design challenge, where we got introduced to biotechnology and the world of proteins. And we fell into a rabbit hole and fell in love with proteins. And we saw that proteins in nature have all these incredible performance properties, such as color, moisture management, waterproofing. And we were like, oh, wow, this is like what we want from our textile fibers. But traditionally in fashion, it's produced through a lot of water, a lot of chemicals, lots of dyes, and lots of plastics. So we decided to see if we could create these proteins and make them into a textile fiber. And we worked on the research for about 2 years, and then we got a bit of funding and went to Columbia, where we developed the tech. And yeah, now we operate out of the downstate incubator. And yeah, that's about it.
That's very interesting, especially coming from traditionally not science background. It's great that you can contribute to the industry and sustainability and things of that sort. So thank you everyone. Thank all the panelists for taking their time from their busy schedules to come talk with us today. So I guess like a question to just kind of start off is like, what courses or experiences did you find most helpful in preparing for this career path? I'm guessing that maybe this wasn't the first, like, your childhood dream, I want to be a sustainability scientist. Maybe it was, but what courses and experience kind of shaped your journey to getting into this sort of field and this type of work?
Do you want me to go?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I relied on my professors and my mentors a lot. Since I don't have a traditional science background, we had a mentor starting off. His name is Sebastian, and he taught me everything. He basically he explained everything in very simple terms, and the way that how you would like cook in a kitchen. It was like the way that he introduced like how you engineer a microbe, how you do like the fermentation process. And I guess for me, I was always a very curious person, and I asked a lot of questions, and I did a variety of internships when I was in college. So I did things from working in innovation to working on design to working on like creating a fiber. And so from doing a lot of those internships was how I was able to see like what I liked and what I didn't like. And that was also what introduced me to the big problem that is how we create our fashion. And I was like, oh wow, everything that we just keep ordering is polyester, everything that we just keep buying is plastic. And that really opened my eyes and got me interested in the more of the field of innovation and seeing how I could contribute to creating something new instead of just continuing to work in the industry that was creating this problem.
That's very interesting. Yeah. Anyone else want to chime in?
Yeah, sure. So I actually did not spend any of my undergrad time and very little of my graduate school time working in the sort of sustainability space. I had been working more in the health and disease space, and in just taking classes and doing research and kind of going down the scientific process, I kept coming up with these same issues. It's like, okay, people are getting sick. Why are they getting sick? Oh, their environment, where they live, what they're eating, like, do they have access to food, so on and so forth. And from that, I was like, okay, so this health and disease issue is actually an issue of the environment. And so like, what I need to turn my attention to something else. I obviously have great respect for the people that are working on drug development and pharmaceuticals, but I felt like there was another way to tackle some of these health and disease issues. And for me, it was, how can I do this work in the environment in a more equitable way, because not everybody has access to healthcare. And I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. How do I go about tackling something as simple as clean water? And that's what we're doing at Vader.
That's great. Jin?
So in NYU had a lot of great opportunities for me, from the PI I did research with to my ability to actually go up to one of my professors 2 weeks before starting my last semester. And I told him, I want to do my own independent design thesis. I want to create my own project, and I want to have this be my thesis for when I graduate, and I want to get a grade on it. This was something that wasn't required for NYU, and I was the only person that year to do it. But doing that allowed me to really be my own person, be my own manager for once, let me find out what it's like to start from nothing and learn from it. So my project was on a supercritical fluid extractor, which isn't really anything related to biotech, but it was something I didn't have any experience in. So I started off by reading textbooks, reading papers, reading patents. I took notes. I took all of the design considerations they had, what set points, and I kind of reverse engineer my own extractor. From there, I started talking to my professors about my design, why it works, why it doesn't work, and how they could help me. And this really allowed me to kind of detail my own project plan, come up with key results that I want to see by certain time points, and really allow me to understand what I want. And then that kind of just delved into the whole part of this is just essentially a reactor. I'm creating a very pressurized reactor. Why not turn it into a living reactor? And kind of delved into my experience and more pursuant into bioreactors and life sciences in general. Sorry, that was rambling.
Oh, that's interesting. I guess you rose to the challenge and you learned a lot of good skills from that, and that you were able to leverage those skills into your career. It's really great. I guess science is not necessarily the easiest thing, especially if you're trying to create something new. Do you guys have any stories about I guess particular challenges or roadblocks in your work, or that a big challenge that you a time that you rose to a challenge and were able to fix something or create something new, was quite strenuous while doing that in the process?
Yeah, I mean, I can absolutely speak to just every day, every day doing science, every day at a startup, every day in a PhD program, you're constantly just trying to iterate on the thing that you were building the day before. And oftentimes that comes with, oh, I don't know how to solve this problem. And you just need to have like a conversation with someone else, maybe like a whiteboarding session or something. I know at Vader, one of our big challenges was, how do we get people to care about PFAS? How do we get people to care about cleaning their water or this plastic? How do we get politicians to care, right? We care, we're really passionate about it. We love science and technology, and we can see the sort of future and the finish line. I think it's really, really hard to get other people to see that. So I think every single day we're thinking of ways, and I'm sure the others that are involved in the startup space as well, or building something, have that same challenge. It's like, this has never been done before. People don't believe it can be done. And you have to talk about it in a way, you have to get people excited about what you're doing. And I think that that's really tough to do every single day. But yeah, we show up and do it.
Yeah, I guess on that note, since these are really new and novel technologies and new ways of doing things, how have you in your practice, to convince people to change habits about, regarding things of the food environment, just regular lifestyle things, how has that played, and as your role as a scientist, convey that to the public or to other stakeholders, beneficiaries of this type of technology?
So I know in my, sorry, the delay, there's a little bit of a delay, but yeah, so I know in my experience, for us, what we've tried to do is make half of what we're working on at Vader, obviously, an innovation, and it is a startup, it's a business, you're expected to, do what businesses do, generate a revenue, right? Be successful, grow, scale, all of that stuff. But at the same time, we've held really close because our team is really focused on education. that sort of angle of, okay, yes, we are a biotechnology startup, but we are also essentially communicators. We are science communicators. We are technology communicators. And half of our job is to not only convince people that the tech is good, but also to teach the broader public that isn't in a STEM field how our technology works and what we're doing and why science can be so exciting. So I've done a little bit of work in my PhD on a citizen science project, and I highly encourage, if you have the chance to work on a project that involves the general public, to do it, because science communication is so important. And you'll learn. We tell people all the time, we have some interns from this program actually, and they're absolutely wonderful. We've kind of told them, like, explain it to someone like you're like exactly like it's a recipe, like you're teaching it to a kindergartner, like that's the type of way you need to talk about this. And if you can't do that, that means you haven't gotten your sort of process right, if that makes sense. Something is missing in the puzzle. So we try really, really hard to not only communicate the tech, but also to generate outreach and communication for the general public as well.
Anyone can add to that as well?
I definitely can agree with that in terms of how do you communicate your technology, I guess, to the general public, especially with my company, where sort of the word like spore, especially I think with like the pandemic and everything, like microbes, everything sounds kind of like scary. So it's like, it's definitely how do you, what words you use in describing your technology in a way that like is like accessible to everybody, and how it like kind of doesn't sound so scary for other people. But we always try to emphasize, like, relate our product to like something that's safe, like, you know, everybody uses probiotics, the safe like bacteria. So it's definitely just about what words you use when you're describing, I think is also really important.
Yeah,
especially for people that aren't like super familiar with like just in general microbiology and stuff.
Yeah, I could imagine that, you know, people might hear the word spore and then they might be like, oh, like like some sort of disease or something like that.
Yeah, so, no, we've had to be careful with like the kind of words we use in our social media and stuff.
Jin or Valentina, you could also talk about that for your particular fields in either fashion or in food.
Yeah, I think similar to what was just mentioned. I think the storytelling aspect is so important, especially for me. It's like we're a biotech company, but our direct customer is brands, and so for us, it's hard. It's definitely changed in the last couple of years. I think when we first started off, a lot of people were like, "Oh, you make your proteins in E. coli, blah blah blah," like just very scared. But now it's changing a lot. I think like a lot of the communication has changed. Like there's this organization called Biofabricate, and they've done really well with communicating how fermentation works and like the purification processes and all that. So that's helped us a lot. But then also we work with the Biomimicry Institute, and I think that when you connect things to nature, it can really resonate with people, because nature has had billions of years of evolution and they've really perfected it pretty well. So I think that's like the most important storytelling thing for us. Like we try to connect, like we're mapping nature's blueprints to how we create our textile fibers. In nature, there's this beautiful pink fluorescent color, and that's because a coral has created it to provide it UV protection. And we're like, okay, how can we take this color and put it into our own textiles and then provide UV protection that way? Yeah, sorry, that was a bit of a rampage, but biomimicry is awesome. Nature is awesome. So look to that.
That's good. We can get inspiration from nature. Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, because I work in the food industry, everyone knows what food is. Everyone knows what a salad is. So it doesn't really, I don't have to explain what a salad is to people, fortunately. But what people actually really do care about, especially since 2020, supply chain has been something that's on everyone's mind. How do we get food to places that need it the most? What if there is another blockage in some shipping or road? How do we get food that is healthy, cheap, and easily accessible to people that need them the most? New York City, unfortunately, doesn't have a lot of land, or New York City doesn't have agricultural land for us. So it's easier for us to spin it as we are using biotechnology and we're using engineering scientific principles to grow sustainably, organically. So we are using very low environmentally impact ways to make sure that the food we are growing is safe, is natural, is meant for people to consume. And because of that, in our excellent marketing team, it really does allow people to trust us more because they know that we are giving them a safe food. We're giving them something that is natural, that hasn't been adulterated or doesn't use pesticides. And I think that does a lot of the work for us on our end.
That's great. That's great to see, like, how that is across, like, different, even though it's a sustainability space, like how diverse it could be in terms of that, and like how you have to communicate that technology that way. On another level, like transitioning from academics to the industry is a little bit anxious for, especially students looking for their first time job and things of that nature. What sort of advice do you kind of give, like based on your own experience, that like kind of helped you, that would like kind of help with the transition between the job, like either doing research in a lab in the university or just going to classes and doing laboratory types of things in classes, to real world science where you have to do products, you have to create products and work inside a corporate hierarchy or startup hierarchy, whatever it is. How could you explain, tell about your experience transitioning from academics to the industry?
Yeah, I answered this one. I promise I will be significantly more put together with my words. So before I started working in industry, I was actually supposed to go to grad school. I had left early because I found a company, Helena, that I wanted to work at. For me, one of the best advice that I got even recently is to, especially for people without a lot of experience, is to embrace that. Embrace the fact that you are able to be a generalist. You're not specialist. You can learn from a textbook, you can learn from papers, and you can learn from hands-on experience and make yourself be an expert in that one thing in that particular time. And that's what really helped me develop my roles and goals, and actually helped me get a lot of the jobs I had applied for, because all of them were new fields to me. I had a lot of experience in polymer sciences. I didn't have experience in genetic engineering, but because I was able to read a few papers, I was able to design something and bring it up to my professors, ask them for clarification. That allowed me to get more valuable experience than someone that just read it from a textbook, or that just learned it from a class, but never actually had hands-on application with it. And then the other thing is, like, LifeSci has been such a great program for me, that it allowed me to network so many people all at once, that it was like how I got into biotech, and then it's how I'm staying in biotech.
Yeah, I would agree completely. I would say definitely, I'm not a science background, so you just, if you're interested in something, I think you really got to go for it. Get your hands dirty, apply for all the internships, even the ones that you think you might not get because you're not the perfect fit. But I'm a big fan of cold calling, cold emailing. Most of the time people don't answer, but sometimes they do. And when they do, it can be the most fulfilling conversation that you will have. So I think just, it's hard to like not be afraid to just send like your message into the void, but it's very satisfying when you get a response back and you just go for it, go to the lab, learn all the different techniques, some that you might have learned in college, some that are completely new, and always just to ask a lot of questions. I think people, especially in college and academics, they're very open to talking to you and very open to sharing their knowledge. So it's just really important to remain curious and to ask a lot of questions.
That's great. One question I kind of have is like, how do you see your field like kind of changing in the last 5-10 years? This is like, these are, you know, food, like sustainable biotechnology in the sustainable space. That's like something that's, you know, kind of new. How have you seen it change since you started working, and how do you forecast the next 5-10 years your industry will change?
So coming from, I think, the PFAS and sort of contaminant space, which is what Vader's working on, and then also sort of thinking about using microbes, right? We mentioned connecting things back to nature. These microbes are naturally occurring. And I think oftentimes we don't look to nature for the answers to our problems. We kind of, we just want to reinvent the wheel all the time. But like Valentina mentioned, like this is years and hundreds of thousands of years of evolution. Like these microbes can do a job that we're trying to do really poorly. And so I think for me in that space, we just saw actually at Vader something super exciting. The FDA and also actually pretty much the FDA and the EPA finally came out with PFAS drinking water standards, and that was like this year. And so I can only imagine they put together like a year ago this entire sort of working group on how are we handling all these contaminants, these chemical, these forever chemicals that are in everything. So I think in the next 5 to 10 years, you're really going to see spaces like mine ramp up because one, people like us, like everyday people, are no longer accepting some of the things that were considered normal, right? So making your clothes out of really crappy materials and plastics and microplastics and forever chemicals, like people are no longer happy with that. And so if a consumer says, no, I'm not going to consume anymore, that's like enough to get a lot of industries to sort of shift and think and move in a different direction. And so I think that's like what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, so we'll that's very interesting, you know, perspective, and that's great that they've done that with the drinking water and they're doing their job, so that's good. And we'll start the Q&A like in a little bit. If anyone has any questions for the panelists, just please type it in the meeting chat, and we'll get to them. I guess one last question from my end would be like, what makes you most proud about working in your industry and the impact of your work? Since these are very important, you know, topics related to food, sustainability, environment, etc. What makes you most proud about your work day to day or just in general?
I guess what makes me most proud of my work is sort of seeing the work that I do in the lab actually become a real technology that we've actually been able to use and partner with a farm and actually use it in a field. So it's been like the past 3 years that I've been working, it's like when you do it day to day, it doesn't really seem as obvious. It's just like, oh, these are just other experiments. But then when you kind of zoom out and look at the big picture, like, wait, I actually created an actual technology and we're actually using it. So that kind of makes me most proud, is being able to see like the work that I'm doing, but also that we can actually use what we're doing. So that makes me really excited about what I'm doing, and hopeful that I've also just learned ways that we can use biotechnology beyond sort of pharmaceuticals and drug discovery, things like that, but also how we can use biotech to create solutions for problems beyond that, which I think was a really big experience I learned over these few years.
Yeah, it's great to see your work actually being worked in the field and not just some sort of theoretical experiment that, you know, is tucked away. So that's great. I guess the rest of you can also attest to that as well.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. It's very cool. I think one of the things that's also exciting about the Vader team is I and a lot of us on the panel, like, first of all, shout out to you guys for getting really diverse individuals on this panel. That does not usually happen. So great job for that. But that's one of the things that makes me most proud of the work that I'm doing at Vader, is that our team is an extremely diverse team from a variety of different backgrounds. And I just get to interact with all kinds of really cool people, whether that be investors I'm talking to, whether that be people in the community where we're sampling this water and we're saying, hey, this is a solution we're trying to bring to your community. I think that is something that's really cool, just like seeing and creating new connections and friendships and working relationships and all of the things, just meeting people I never thought I would meet every single day.
That's great. Brings more life to the science. And that's great. We'll start with the Q&A. As I said, if you have any questions for the panelists, don't hold your peace. Put it into the chat, and we'll try to get to it in the time. So Madhus asks, like, to people on the panel with other commitments like PhD, family commitments, or other school, can you talk a bit about how you manage your commitments day to day on top of your work and research? I guess,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Valentina, yeah, sure.
I can go. I don't manage other commitments anymore. I'm full-time with Werewool, but I started Werewool when I was a sophomore in college. So there was a lot of commitments I had to manage. I had to graduate. I had to keep my job so I could continue living in New York. And then also had to work on developing the startup on the weekends at nighttime. And I think it just goes back to your commitment and passion a lot. I think there's a lot of walls that you're going to hit when you have a lot of commitments going on. But I think it's important to take a step back and look to the bigger picture as to what you want to achieve. And I think it's really important to build your community around you, because a lot of the times your friends don't really understand what you're doing or why you're doing. So I found it important to just try to go to like networking events, or try to go to like other founder meetups or like tech meetups, stuff like that, just so you could talk to people that are in your space, but not in this like small little hole that you're in, just constantly working. So yeah, and I'm also always happy to talk to anyone. If you guys are struggling with something and want to talk about it, just reach out on email. I will share it in my chat.
Thanks for that. I'm pretty sure, like, people like, some sort of mentorship or things like that. We really appreciate that. Mahin asks, like, when making the leap into industry, was there any moments of panic or just the idea of not knowing what field of industry you would get into? As biotech, it has many diverse fields itself.
Ooh, yeah, I think for me personally, I have always felt quite like a generalist. I've never wanted to commit to like one area. I'd always been really interested, especially during undergrad, in complex systems and like this broader understanding of, intersections between health and disease, environment, sustainability. Like lots of people always tell you, oh, you need to pick one thing and like go in that direction. And I have pushed against that my entire career. And it's worked out pretty well for me, although it's created some stress. I think just, like going where you're most passionate and most excited really helps. It really, really helps. And people often talk about, oh, you'll know when you're making the right decision because you get this like gut feeling. It just feels like right or good. Any decision that you make is great because in some way, shape, or form, you will gain some sort of experience. And that's how I kind of think about lots of the moves that I've made in my career. I just try to go with the best decision at that point in time. No decision is perfect. No choice is the wrong choice or the right choice. It's just a choice. And something a mentor told me was that if you don't like it when you try it, then move on to something else. Like just move on to the next thing. Always be trying to grow and iterate and grow as an individual. And I think that that will, help you along your journey in your career, and maybe hopefully release some of the stress that oftentimes people feel when they feel like they have to have it all figured out day one, because I don't, and it's multiple days later than one. So
next question, Jonathan asks, did any of the panelists have moments where they felt stuck in what they wanted to do with their career and never felt like a sense that they were behind? I know it could be difficult to break into the biotech industry, so they would like to hear your perspectives on that.
I can say, like, I have definitely felt behind. I started, so it took me 5 years to graduate undergrad. Fun fact. I was a college athlete. That was why. So I spent my first 2 years as a D1 athlete. And then I switched and was like, oh, I'm not going to be a professional athlete. I'm not that good. Like, I want to do science. And then from that, I was automatically just felt like, oh my God, everybody knows what's happening. Everybody knows what they're doing. Everybody's going to med school. Everybody's going to get a PhD. And I just did not have that type of clarity. So it took me 5 years. And then I didn't decide I want to go to grad school probably until my senior year of college. So I was quite delayed in that decision-making process. So yeah, I think I've always been a little bit behind. But in that, I realized that you're not actually behind. You're not actually behind at all. Everybody is kind of running their own race. And I think not comparing yourself to other people is really, really hard in the age of social media. You get on Twitter every single day and you're like, oh my God, this person started this company, or this person built this platform or this program or got this internship or whatever. And it's oftentimes really, really hard to sort of dial that in and say, hey, like, no, I'm doing the best that I can do right in this moment. So I actually have in my notebook, which I carry around with me all the time, I swear I'm not lying to you, this tiny little notepad where I just write small wins. Like, what did I do today? Like, what kind of progress was I making? And it's just a way for me to look back and say, okay, at the end of the week, like, I feel like I didn't do anything, but like, look at all the things that I actually did in service of my broader or my long-term goal. So yeah, small wins are huge.
Yeah, small wins add up. So, keep, positive mindset. That's great. O'Neill asks, I guess, like, I could pose this question to Valentina. When developing a biotech product, how do you prioritize between fundraising and marketing, research and product development, and what strategies can biotech companies use to effectively balance these priorities? I'm guessing, like, in terms of a startup sense.
Yeah. I think it's definitely, those are all very important things that you have to prioritize at all times. I would say that when we first started off, we had grant funding and we held off fundraising. And now I know that you're always fundraising. That's just how it is when you're in a biotech startup, because you never know when you can get money, when you won't be able to get money. I mean, right now, I'm sure a lot of you guys know, like, market is really tight. So just always fundraising is important. I think when it comes to marketing, that's something that I struggle with currently, because there's only 2 people on our team that are on the business side. So we're wearing all hats and the rest is on the science end. So I handle a lot of the marketing, the social media and all that stuff. And I think it's hard because people want you to post, but you're in the lab, you're developing stuff that is confidential. And it's hard to make that balance, but people are constantly like, oh, why aren't you posting on social media and stuff like that? I'm like, our research team is working. I don't want to go in and take videos right now. It's a little bit strange. But some people do take the approach of posting about like current industry news, like what's happening, what are new like legislations that are coming in, just being more like industry aware on social media. I think that's an approach that some people take. I find it hard because I'm not great at social media. So I am looking for a social media intern if anyone is interested that's on this call. And then for research and product development, I think that ties in with fundraising. I think it's really important to be super transparent with your investors and with everyone that has given you money as to like where your product is, to not overcommit to your goals, because a lot of the times, a lot of these biotech companies, they've overcommitted, and I think it's made a lot of us have a bad rep. Yeah, those are my bits of advice, if that helps.
That's good. I guess there are many aspects to running a business. I guess nowadays social media is also one of those things that you got to check off, I guess, as well. So that's good. Sarah has a question for Jin. Said question for Jin. He mentioned, because like you mentioned, you would study certain topics before applying. They said that was cool. What would you say, like, knowledge in comparison to hands-on experience? What like balance and like can is enough to like get your foot into the door? I know when talking about science experimenting, it can be a bit harder, especially if you don't really have the hands-on experience for the knowledge.
Yeah, so hands-on experience is important, but it's not the only thing. For me, during my interviews, I remember afterwards, after I spoke to the CEO, after I spoke to the CTO, after I spoke to directors, they all had mentioned that they loved my drive and passion. They loved how enthusiastic I was about the field and how I had taken initiative to learn about something that I'm not 100% comfortable in. This is something new for me. And that was really what got my foot in the door. When I see something I'm passionate about, I go into a deep dive into it. I see what I can do personally for the field and how that can personally, or that not personally, but how that can affect the community or the world around it. And I think just having that kind of drive is very important. Yeah. I'm sorry.
In terms of, we have like, several alumni of our life science internship program, and I'm guessing maybe some of you, created internships. I mean, one of the panelists created their own company. I guess they created their own job through that. How did your internship experience like shape you, the way that you thought about, science and your career, and any tips for trying to secure and go through internships in the upcoming cycle?
I guess for me, my internship really introduced me to other ways that we can use biotechnology. I participated in the International Genetic Engineering Machine competition, or the iGEM competition, during that time. And that's just basically a whole competition where it's basically where many teams are just using like synthetic biology to find solutions to many different problems. My team, for example, was trying to use E. coli to battle citrus greening disease that affects citrus trees in Florida. So I learned a lot about how we can use biotech for a lot of things. And so for me, it really first shaped the way I saw biotech and biology in general, but also I learned a lot just skill-wise that I didn't really learn in class. And for me, it was really a big stepping stone for my career. And for people that are going in for their internships, I really just recommend, like, you're there to learn, and to just accept that, like, you're here, you want to learn everything that you can, but also just accept that you'll like make mistakes, because you're new. You're not expected to know everything when you start your internship. You're there for the reason to learn. And so to accept that you want to learn and that you'll make mistakes, but mistakes are a learning process. And it's just, for me, it's been a really important part of my career.
That's some great words of wisdom and advice, especially for people that are going for their first internship or their first job, graduating in the summer. So that's great. I guess like we have time for like, I guess, one final question. I guess like what types of advice would you give, like what types of advice would you give for someone that's like really interested in a particular biotechnology, or a particular field in sustainable biotech, like, just like any sort of like parting words or sort of advice for people that are interested in this space?
Yeah, I mean, I think the easiest thing, I guess easiest piece of advice is to stay curious about things, ask a lot of questions, and talk to as many people as you can that are working in that space every single day. You never know, like, when you might get an idea or when you might meet your next mentor or find your next job. So I think like going to these networking events, talking to people, reading, staying up to date with the news, if you can. I get like email updates. That's a great way. The internet is a really, really powerful tool if you use it well. But yeah, stay curious.
I guess that's the motto of science, right? And what pushes it forward, right? So I want to thank, the panelists again for, taking time. This was a very interesting panel, very diverse, fields, and all contributing for the greater good of humanity. So that's great. And, thank you. And for everyone that's interested in, maybe, participating in this space, like we do have, internships with like, several companies in this space as well. So we highly encourage you to apply for the internship program. The deadline is like this, the end of this week, we'll plug in for that. And thank you, and hope everyone has a good night.